Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we talked about microservices communication types, which are synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. And we understood that synchronous communication involves the request-response pattern, and then the asynchronous involves using message queues like Kafka, RabbitMQ, and you could also use WebSockets as well. Now, we want to just briefly talk about communication styles. Now, what are the communication styles that are used in microservices architecture? Now, the first style is the request-response communication for live queries and updates. Now, this diagram or this image was gotten from Microsoft Learn document. There's a documentation about or tutorial about microservices. So I got this image from there. So this is the first communication style, request response, and you could also say this is a synchronous communication. Okay, so it involves the client sending a request and then waits for a response. So you can see from the image, the client here is a mobile app and then sends a request to the backend. Here in this diagram, the message is passing through an API gateway. And then the API gateway will send a request to the respective microservice, and then it waits for a response. The client will have to wait for a response, okay? So this is a synchronous communication style, which involves requests and response. Like I said, we are going to use this communication style. We are going to use the synchronous communication type and the asynchronous communication type. And it's going to also involve the request-response communication style. Okay, so we send a request from our client, and the request will go to the API gateway. The request will not go from the client directly to any microservice. All requests from the client will pass through an API gateway, and it's going to use HTTP. Okay, we'll create REST APIs via HTTP. So this is the first style, request response. Then another that probably we are all familiar with is push and real-time communications. Okay, now this involves the backend sending messages to as many consumers as possible. An example of this is your push notification. Okay, so you want to send from your application, you want to send a push notification to all users that are listening for a particular event. This is the type of communication that is based on, so one to many. So it could be HTTP, it could be WebSocket, but mostly it uses WebSockets and Socket IO. Okay, so you send push notification. Now we are going to use this, but not in great details, and we are not going to create like push notifications. We are going to implement Socket IO that will be used to send events from the microservice to the API gateway and then to the client. Okay, so when we send on the client, every listeners for that particular event will get the data that is sent via this real-time communication. Okay, so this push and real-time communication is also a communication type used in microservices. And then lastly, we have the asynchronous event-driven communication. Now for this communication type, it usually involves the communication between microservices. Okay, so communication between your authentication service and your payment, or communication between your product and your cart. So if you want to send a message from your authentication service to your product, you can use the event-driven communication. And we are going to, this is the communication we are going to use. The communication between our microservices that is not the API gateway will be event-driven. So communication between authentication and review service will not be via HTTP. It will only be via events. Okay, so this just involves one service publishing an event, okay, via an event bus or a message queue, and then all the services that are listening for that event will get the data. So yeah, it involves the publish subscribe pattern. Okay, so the asynchronous event-driven communication involves the publish subscribe pattern. As you can see from the diagram, the user service publishes an event via the event bus, And then the basket microservice and the ordering microservices that are listening for that particular event, they get the data sent via the event. Okay, so we are going to use this asynchronous communication as well. So to recap, the communication styles that are used in microservices are the request response, the push and the real-time communication, and then the asynchronous event-driven communication. These communication styles will be used in our own application.